Hi everyone, welcome to this session titled News Manufacturers Consumer Service Provider. My name is Sahel Nawaz and I currently head up the digital team within Khaleej Times. Thank you to the team for inviting me to speak. Truly blessed to have the opportunity to share our digital transformation story with you, which really illuminates how we are moving from a news manufacturer to a consumer service provider. I believe there are elements of our story which will resonate with you all. And just to give you a quick background on myself, I started my journey with KT back in October 2019. And it's been an absolutely crazy journey since I started, just to say the least. When I started, I was given a team of 8 people and told to go digitalize the business. So for the last 20 months, that's exactly what the team and I have been doing. And here's our story. So let me take you back to where it all began. Once upon a time, there was a family called the Galadaris, and the 2 brothers, really, Abdul Latif, the late Abdul Latif and the late Abdul Rahim, who was the older brother, they were entrepreneurs of their era, and they had a vision to form many companies in the UAE. And today, the next generation have carried that on, and we have many divisions, many units that cover sort of heavy lifting, food and beverage, and news media as well. The Galadaris were one of the original business families of Dubai, and they've been a pillar of the business revolution that's taken place in the UAE. The first business was set up in 1960, and Galadari Printing and Publishing, or Khaleej Times, was introduced to the world on 16th of April 1978. And you can see from this visual, this visual that you can see is the first edition of Khaleej Times. And you can also see here in the middle picture, just under the Khaleej Times brand name that's a sheikh, that's a ruler, Sheikh Rashid, opening up Khaleej Times and opening up the press. So for 43 years back, we were at the first English language daily newspaper in the UAE, and 43 years on, we continue to be the highest circulated English language newspaper throughout the GCC, which is a block of 6 countries covering Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and of course UAE. Now, in terms of recognition in the media, we have a strong heritage of trailblazing in our industry and being recognized by our peers for it. We've been blessed with many awards, ranging from winning the Gold Prize at Dubai International Print Awards, as you can see from this picture here. And we've also won many other awards from our peers, our industry associations like EMEA and One IFRA. And it's really nice to continue that tradition as we go forward, with one of our latest awards being the Vibe Martech Awards. And now, we're getting recognized for what we're doing in the digital space, which is real progression from the awards that we used to get when we were in the print space. So as we continue, we really have to understand sort of, when we talk about this, our story and what was happening globally within the publishing, within journalism and the publishing industry, that old business model of advertising revenues supporting journalism, as you can see from my beautifully hand-drawn drawing here, was completely defunct. And what was happening also, and what continues to happen, is consumption of news has changed and continues to change and become fragmented. And customer journeys have changed, audience demands were changing. When we talk about privacy, personalization, requirement of preference-based news now and push to them across platforms real time. The always-on audience had a completely different set of demands. In addition to that, when you look at what's been happening with the old debate with publishers versus platforms, and that continues to rage, where the pendulum now is swinging back towards publishers from platforms. If you look at digitalized revenues that were being monopolized by your big platforms of the world, and content consumption of news sites were being diluted by them, as well as them monopolizing digital revenues. And the technology landscape completely changed when we look at the third-party cookie apocalypse and what's happening there. And of course, the global pandemic hit as well. So, the global pandemic with COVID, really, I'm going to refer to it as our global chief digital innovation officer, because it really did act as a catalyst within our journey, and I'll cover that in later slides. So that was sort of, when we talk about the perfect storm, they were some of the external factors. And then when we look at some of the internal factors, when I arrived for these times, we had some additional local challenges with our aged sort of web assets and our CMS and our people and processes. So I was brought in to disrupt a traditional print business and had a mandate to move the business through to being a digital first business. So 3 months in, whilst I was still in my scoping phase, the global chief digital innovation officer, aka COVID, came knocking at our door. So, and what that did, again, it presented a different set of challenges for us. We saw in the lockdown, we saw our audiences grow 3x, but our revenues nosedived. So in reality, but if we look at what was happening in the industry anyway, COVID really only acted as a catalyst for what was already happening. So we had to pivot, and we had to pivot quick. And our 10-year plan became a 3-year roadmap. Our 3-year roadmap became a 12-month tube map. And for those who are in the London audience, they'll get what I'm talking about then. I'll show you a slide later on that just to sort of pack that out a little bit. So what was the solution? The solution really was around our key strategic goals had to be focused around the mindset. And what that mindset involved was changing that position of being our position of being a news manufacturer to actually being a consumer service provider. Now, what do I mean by that? Journalism had to go from a product to a service. Our focus had been traditionally around the advertiser. Now it had to be around our audience. And it was a complete culture change that we had to initiate. So we started with what we call a 3P strategy, which is really about people, partners, and process. And effectively what we had to do, we had to make sure we had the right people. We had to go out and seek and identify the right partners, the right tech partners to deliver our vision of, that our consumer digital first strategy, and our processes. Our processes was a massive shift for us because we had to go from the shift really involved the process of writing for a print product that gave us digital content on our website and our web assets. And then we had to completely turn that around to now starting writing writing digital content to push into our web assets that gave us a print product. So it was a complete, sort of turnaround of our business and a complete turnaround from the newsroom and thinking at a strategic level with our senior management team. So we have some underpinning KPIs, and those underpinning KPIs were really around better understanding our audiences at a granular level. We had to start building one-to-one relationships with our audiences and personalizing our engagement and collecting data from our audiences in a compliant way, and really talking about creating audience segments from our zero and first party data as opposed to traditional ways that we've been doing that. So the change in business model to, advertising revenue sales, supporting journalism, to advertising revenue sales and consumer or reader revenues supporting journalism. Now, obviously Telium have been, the Telium CDP has been the foundation of what we're building here. And later on, I'll come to show you the tech stack and where Telium fit in and how we connect it to the content management system, our CMS. So again, massive decisions around partnerships, Telium being one of our main partners that have allowed us to move with those underpinning KPIs and move that sort of mindset and move our business in terms of the pivot that we're currently still undergoing. So when we look at the challenges in transforming, this old picture here of Fleet Street really sums it up back in London in the day, where if we look at sort of the culture of the business and the newsroom, being able to change that in a family-run business is a massive challenge. But I'm very happy to say that we have from the senior management team and the owners. They were once we presented this to them, although there was a few sort of eye openers in terms of, oh my God, this guy's gone mad. What is he talking about? They've been very, very supportive and allowed us to take the business in a completely different direction. And if you just look at the newsroom, like this picture here, very chaotic. But again, the way traditionally newsrooms function, it was on opinions, it was on the experience of the editors, of the editor-in-chief, and they would sort of really decide what made the cut within the paper. Now what we're shifting to is data journalism. What we're shifting to is letting data drive which content gets produced and which content gets focused on to produce more of, and which content doesn't make the cut. So the culture, absolutely a big challenge that we're working through. The tech stack, tech stack, again, that old boardroom discussion. Well, if we need new tech, we clearly do need new tech. Should we buy it in? Which is obviously going to be a huge investment, massive investment, or do we build our own, which is going to be a massive investment and take time? So to sort of come out of that, we decided to do, not to buy or to build, we decided to partner, right? And again, that's one of our key partners being Telium. They've been a key part in all our discussions of building that tech stack. So thank you to the gang that's helped us to do that. And then we come to people, the challenges in transforming, we have to have the right people strategy. And one of the challenges we had here locally is around the insecurity of what we were doing at such a pace that we were doing it at, right? So, people saying, oh, am I going to still have a job? And, so the communication to the people around, look, we are going to retrain you. There is going to be some repurposing, and there's going to be some elements where we need to recruit new people. So that, 3 R's, retrain, repurpose, and recruit has been central to how we've run that in parallel to bringing in new tech partners as well to build that tech stack. And obviously we can't forget, the Chief Digital Innovation Officer. COVID, the other issue we've had with COVID is that with some of our partners that are not local, we've had a hard time getting them on the ground, right? So to help us, support us through the implementation phase, we've had some challenges there as well. And, certain days we have meetings and it becomes death by Zoom, but we get there. So some additional challenges we have with COVID, and this is where, it really consolidates the thinking around having to change our business model, having to change from being a news manufacturer to consumer service provider, with some of the additional challenges that COVID presented to us as a publisher. So there was a period during COVID here, and certainly during lockdown, where we were told that we couldn't print the newspaper anymore because it was due to a scare of COVID spreading on paper. At one point, we were told that no more newspapers. And then we did a little bit of, there's some negotiation that took place. And then we were allowed by the National Media Council, who control the sort of publishers in this country. Okay, well, you can print, but you can only print for your subscribers, which was a fraction of obviously what we was putting out as a whole. So once we then got to that point, we could print, but then certain areas got locked down and some of our printing staff were in those areas. So then we couldn't get people in to the printing press to actually do the physical job. And at the same time, ad sales were plummeting. So again, commercial decisions were we were coming around and having we created a sort of a war room where we met. It was obviously a virtual one, and we met every day within this war room, the senior management team. And we were thinking, okay, how can we address these issues? And one of the pivotal moments for me really was when, the commercial, we have an e-paper, which the e-paper is literally a sort of, it's an e-version of our printed paper. And, this was a paid product. So people paid, a subscription for this. And so there was some discussion commercially around, okay, why don't we just increase the price for that because it will offset. Now, our argument from the digital team is, no, this is a perfect moment now although, we're in a crisis and we need to generate revenues, actually, we should make our e-paper free of charge, not up the cost on it. And that was really around that first key moment where we moved as a business to really being a service provider. So we made our e-paper FOC, and we saw obviously our subscription surge. We then produced a free newsletter around COVID. Again, we saw registration surge. So that engagement piece with relation to the sort of service provision angle that we took rather than a commercial decision was really one of the key moments for us. There are a number of other partnerships that we sort of got together with Amazon, Google, Facebook, all as part of that journey to become digital first. And the key one, before I go into sort of unpack this next slide, was the DMP versus the CDP debate, right? So third-party cookie was crumbling, and we need to get more granular with our audiences. So for us, it was just absolutely the right way to sunset our DMP, which we had at a group level, and replace that with Telium CDP, and obviously we signed with Telium in Q4. So as Bruce says here, it's all about application and it's all about doing, right? So our deployment so far, what we've been focused on is the centralization of all our data. We've been focused on audience segmentation, and we're looking at that in many different ways. So what is the content consumption, bucketing our audiences, identifying high propensity to pay audiences for the future. And the data that's visible to us now is really helping shape our future engagement and our future revenue strategies, right? One of our key use cases, and again, this was absolutely critical, and I'm really pleased to say that we were one of the first publishers to do it in this region, was being GDPR compliant, collecting our data and using that as a real value proposition to letting our audiences know that yes, we are collecting your data, but we are GDPR compliant and we take your data really, really important. It's a really important aspect of what we do in terms of how we take consent, how we store it, and how we give you access to it if you want to view it or change your decision on the consent or even just delete it. So, I mean, I'll just give you a little bit of an insight for my Arabic, for any Arabic viewers who are watching this, you'll be familiar with a term called Khali Wali. Khali Wali for the non-Arabic sort of audience just means, whatever, okay, it's fine, it'll be fine. So we had been experiencing previous companies I've worked for when we talked about being data compliant. GDPR, it doesn't really register high on a lot of people's agendas, but for mine, I had to get through that Khali Wali stage, and the GDPR was really our focus of our first use case, which we're now fully compliant. And again, thanks to Telium for supporting us to do that. So delivering preference-based news real-time cross-device was another real important use case for us, and personalized and increased engagement, and that creation of our zero and first-party data audience segments. Again, because at the end of the day, we still have to make money, right? So that's a key part of how we will, in the future, have increased revenues, because the CPM value of a zero and first-party data segments obviously are more beneficial to the traditional ones we were using from third-party data. So what Yoda is talking about here, being in the Middle East, Yoda is talking about halal veal bacon, and the aroma of opportunity for us is really massive, right? So, we're future-proofing our business. We're collecting audience data in a compliant way and using this as a value proposition. We're building, as I said earlier, we're building out our own zero and first-party data segments, which has, a revenue value attached to it. And we're the opportunity around personalization, like we've never seen before, and the engagement at every touch point of our audience journey. So one-to-one relationships with our audiences, real time, and a deeper engagement with our loyal audiences is one of the major opportunities, because obviously our loyal audiences will eventually go on to, we'll nudge them through to subscription, right? So it's really important that, the opportunity of having those one-to-one relationships and moving them down the funnel to actually, paid content is a critical part of our new model. So opportunities really are endless, I have to say. What we are doing in the future is, again, using Telium as our main partner on this. We will be building our own data lake. We will be building our own voice answer engine. We're looking at ultimately increasing our revenues, because, as much as we do like to serve the community, Khaleej Times is still not, you'll still not find Khaleej Times on any list of registered charities. We do have to make money, right? So we are moving to that paid content model. So again, Telium CDP and the suites we've bought are central to realizing our vision and realizing the return on investment. and really helping us move towards that transition to consumer service providers. There are many opportunities and many points we have to reach as the journey continues, and through our people and our partners, we're on the right track, which is why when we receive the awards like we received at Vibe and Martech, it's really important that when we get an independent panel of experts validating our journey, it sort of just really rubber stamps that actually you're moving in the right direction. So moving on to the evolution of customer experience, we really had to sort of look at this and again, for anybody that knows London, this is the Central Line. So going from Epping to West Ruislip, I believe. But in order to move from being a news manufacturer to consumer service provider, we had to identify our key value drivers, which we sort of detailed. We had lots of discussion around this, but data, content, and audiences. They're the three key value drivers for us. So we're using data from the CDP connected to our content management system to take customer experience to a level never seen before in KT, through being able to analyze our content consumption and serve preference-based news and personalize and differentiate our messaging real-time cross-device and ensure our audiences see adverts that are relevant to them. In reality, due to COVID, the journey between the stations speeded up on the tube map, as you can see, and things we were originally planning 5 or 6 years down the line have been brought forward, and we're now developing them as we speak. 10-year plans in our business now just don't exist anymore, okay? But what we are now doing is putting in the tech stack in place, and the tech stack that we've invested in is, and certainly what we're building out with Telium, will ensure that we continue to be service providers in the future who remain profitable. So let's show you a peek of the tech stack that we've built, where we've connected our CDP to the CMS. And what you'll see here, Naviga Global, or in terms of our content management system, it really, they are one of our main partners, but in the heart of all of that is the Telium CDP. And what the Telium CDP allows us to do, it allows us to obviously enrich our CMS audience segmentation, and it feeds into Naviga Engage, which eventually, when all this tech is in place, will allow us to have and build personalized payment walls, dynamic paywalls, as well as sort of, really being able to serve the relevant ads to the relevant audiences. So a key piece there in terms of the tech that we're building, and like I say, Telium CDP at the heart of it. So to sum that up, what we're looking at here is a digital transformation, which is circa $2 million over the next couple of years. And we have also, on top of this now, we have our new web assets that are going to be launching. We've got a new website coming. We've got a new app that's launching in the next couple of months, a brand new smart paper. And it's all built, this is the foundation that it's being built on. So when I started this presentation, I said to you I was given a team of 8 people who have developed into what the team looks like now, and what the team what will look like at the end of the year. The vast majority of these positions are now in place, and we really are sort of pivoting that business model now to go after being a service, a consumer service provider and providing a service. And this is the team that's sort of going to be really overseeing that. And my tech manager now, he's getting ready to step into my position. He's been fully, the succession plan is all in place, and it's been a wonderful journey. So that's what the team will look like by the end of the year. And really just summing up, really, in the journey, let's just talk through some really sort of key points in the journey. So I hope to share that with you. So what we've learned so far is choose partners, not vendors. I think that's one of our key points, and it's a key point that we sat down when we first started speaking to Telium, that we're not interested in vendors. We want long-term partners to help us on this journey, and we mapped out that journey for them, and they've been key in every point of that. The key partners in our transition from manufacturer to service provider has been the CDP and the CMS when you connect them together. Make sure you centralize your data and let data drive the decisions that you make. The other key learning is empower and enable and trust your people. Know your audience, engage them at every touch point of their journey, personalize at every opportunity. Privacy is paramount and it's a great value proposition. And we have to be able to predict future needs to keep your audiences. That's another key learning in terms of the journey that we've been on so far. Choose local partners who go far and beyond what you need and are always on hand to guide you through the transition process. And that's what we found we've had with Telium. And finally, as the Dalai Lama says, know the rules well so you can break them effectively. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the story. I hope you enjoyed the journey that we've been on. And please visit us to get your news for the UAE. Come and visit us at www.khaleejtimes.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in, for inviting me to speak. And I hope you've enjoyed the session. Thank you.